The sky above Sarian 4 churned with thick, yellow-tinged clouds, their bellies heavy with acidic rain that would begin falling in a matter of hours. Captain Arlen Hayes, lead scout for the Terra Alliance, checked his environmental suit's integrity readout one last time before signaling his team to advance. The hostile atmosphere of Sarian 4 was just one of many dangers they faced deep in Zeltron Empire territory. "Team Phantom status check," Arlen whispered into his comm unit. "Phantom 2, operational," came Lieutenant Celine Mora's crisp response. "Phantom 3 through 6, all green." The rest of his team confirmed in sequence. Arlen nodded, satisfied. "Remember, this is strictly reconnaissance. We need intel on the Zeltron defensive grid, not a firefight. The Alliance is flying blind on their fortification patterns, and High Command needs this data before they can mount a proper offensive." November 2257 marked the third year of the interplanetary war between the Terra Alliance and the Zeltron Empire. What had begun as a territorial dispute over resource-rich moons had escalated into full-scale conflict spanning multiple star systems. The battle for Sarian 4 had been particularly brutal, a strategically vital planet that had changed hands twice already in the past month alone. Celine adjusted her scanner. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy signatures 2 clicks northeast. Doesn't match any known Zeltron patterns in our database." Arlen frowned beneath his helmet visor. The Alliance's intelligence on Zeltron technology was woefully incomplete. Another reason their mission was so critical. "Could be a trap, or could be exactly what we're looking for. Let's move in, but stay tight. Defensive formation Delta." The team advanced through the craggy terrain, navigating between acid pools that dotted the landscape like mirrors of death. Steam rose from their surfaces, creating a ghostly maze of toxic vapor that their environmental suits could only partially filter. Each step had to be carefully placed. One breach in their protective gear would mean a slow, painful death. As they approached the energy signature source, Arlen raised his fist, signaling an immediate halt. Something felt wrong. Years of field experience had honed his instincts to detect danger before his equipment could confirm it. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Too quiet." The words had barely left his mouth when the ridge above them erupted with weapons fire. Brilliant blue energy bolts sliced through the mist, striking the rocks around them with concussive force. "Ambush! Take cover!" Arlen shouted, diving behind a boulder as return fire from his team lit up the darkening sky. "It's an elite Zeltron scout unit," Celine called out, her voice tight with tension as she fired back. "They've got us pinned down!" Arlen's tactical display flashed with warning indicators as enemy signatures multiplied. "They knew we were coming. Fall back to extraction point Beta. I'll cover." His team began a strategic withdrawal while Arlen provided covering fire. His Alliance-issue pulse rifle sending bursts of energy toward the Zeltron positions. As Phantom Team retreated, a heavy explosion rocked the ground beneath them. A secondary Zeltron unit had circled behind, cutting off their planned escape route. "New extraction point," Arlen commanded. "Split up and regroup at Charlie in 30 minutes." The team scattered, each member taking a different path through the toxic landscape. Arlen sprinted toward a narrow ravine, energy bolts impacting all around him. As he rounded a corner, the ground beneath his feet suddenly gave way, a hidden sinkhole, possibly caused by the acid rain eroding the planet's surface. He tumbled downward, his environmental suit scraping against jagged rocks. His comm unit crackled with static as Celine's voice broke through. "Captain, do you copy? Captain Hayes?" But before he could respond, a sharp rock struck his helmet, cracking his visor and knocking his comm unit offline. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was his suit's integrity alert, flashing red as toxic atmosphere began seeping in. Back at the Terra Alliance forward base, panic spread as Phantom Team returned without their captain. "We lost contact during the ambush," Celine reported to Commander Reeves, her face etched with concern. "His last known position was Grid Sector 17B, But when we circled back, there was no sign of him, just a collapsed area and traces of Zeltron activity. Commander Reeves scowled. And his tracker? Offline, sir, either damaged or deliberately disabled by the enemy. Deploy search drones and recalibrate our long-range scanners, Reeves ordered. Captain Hayes is one of our best scouts. If he's alive, we need to find him. But as hours stretched into a full day with no signal, no distress beacon, and no sign of movement in hostile territory, hope began to fade. Alliance protocol was clear. After 24 hours of radio silence in enemy territory, personnel were classified as missing in action, presumed lost. We can't just abandon him, Celine argued during the command briefing at the 24-hour mark. Commander Reeves shook his head. Lieutenant Mora, we've deployed every asset we can spare. The longer we keep search vessels in Zeltron airspace, the more we risk losing them too. I'm sorry, but Captain Hayes is officially MIA. Unbeknownst to his team, Arlen Hayes was indeed alive, though far from well. He regained consciousness in near-complete darkness, lying on his back in a shallow cave. His environmental suit was compromised, the visor cracked, and most of its systems offline. The emergency air filtration was functioning on minimal power, enough to keep him alive, but not indefinitely. Arlen performed a self-assessment: bruised ribs, a gash on his forehead, and a sprained ankle. Painful, but survivable. His equipment, however, was another matter. His pulse rifle was gone, likely lost in the fall. His navigation system was offline, and his emergency beacon damaged beyond repair. Not exactly how I planned this mission, he muttered to himself, his voice raspy from the thin air mixture his damaged suit provided. First priority, assess the immediate environment. The cave appeared to be part of a natural network formed by ancient lava tubes. A faint glow of bioluminescent fungi provided just enough light to navigate by. The air was thin but breathable in short bursts. Sarian IV's atmosphere wasn't immediately lethal without a suit, just gradually toxic with prolonged exposure. Arlen cautiously removed his damaged helmet, taking shallow breaths. The air tasted metallic and burned slightly in his lungs, but he could manage short periods without filtration. He needed to conserve his suit's remaining power. Next priority, find water and establish a secure position. Following the gentle slope of the cave floor, he discovered a small underground reservoir where rainwater had collected. Testing revealed it was acidic, but could be neutralized using mineral deposits from the cave walls, a basic survival technique from his training. As Arlen established his makeshift base, his mind was already working on a strategy. The Terra Alliance would have declared him missing by now, possibly even presumed dead. No rescue would be forthcoming. If he wanted to survive, he would need to get himself out of Zeltron territory, and if he could complete his original mission along the way, all the better. Over the next few hours, he inventoried his remaining resources: a combat knife, a half-depleted medical kit, emergency rations for 2 days, and fragments of his damaged communications equipment. Not enough to send a signal, but parts could be repurposed. Using strips torn from the inner lining of his suit, Arlen fashioned a crude filtration mask to allow longer periods outside without his helmet. He created a basic map of his surroundings on a piece of synthetic paper from his medkit, marking his position with an estimate based on the stars he glimpsed through a small opening in the cave ceiling. First rule of hostile territory survival, he reminded himself, recalling his advanced training: observe before you act. When he finally ventured outside, the alien landscape was bathed in the eerie glow of Sarian's 3 moons. Acid pools reflected the light, creating an otherworldly scene that might have been beautiful, if not for its deadly nature. Arlen moved silently, staying low and using natural cover to avoid detection. It didn't take long to spot Zeltron activity. A patrol moved through a valley a kilometer from his position, their sleek armor gleaming in the moonlight. Arlen watched their patterns. noting their formation and the direction of their movement. They were systematic, efficient, and searching for something, probably him. Retreating to his cave, he refined his map, adding patrol routes and timing. If he could avoid detection, he might be able to observe Zeltron operations and gather the intelligence his team had been sent for in the first place. On his second excursion, Arlen ventured farther, discovering a small Zeltron outpost nestled between rocky outcroppings. From a concealed position, he observed troop movements, equipment, and most importantly, communications patterns. The Zeltron forces were more substantial than Alliance intelligence had suggested, with technology that seemed to integrate seamlessly with Sarian's hostile environment rather than merely defending against it. As he was returning to his shelter, a sound stopped him cold. A low, rumbling growl unlike anything in the Alliance xenobiology database. Arlen slowly turned to find himself facing a predator native to Sarian 4, a six-limbed creature with a body structure reminiscent of both Earth's dogs and chimpanzees, but with adaptations clearly evolved for this harsh environment. Its skin was a mottled gray-green that blended perfectly with the rocky terrain, and its eyes reflected the moonlight with an eerie intelligence. The creature stalked forward, powerful muscles tensing beneath its hide. Arlen knew running would trigger its predatory instinct. Instead, he held his ground, maintaining eye contact, while slowly reaching for his knife. The standoff lasted several tense seconds before the creature suddenly lunged. Arlen dodged, feeling claws graze his damaged suit as he rolled away. The beast was faster than he'd anticipated, recovering almost instantly for another attack. This time, Arlen was ready. As it sprang, he sidestepped and delivered a precise strike with his knife, opening a shallow cut along the creature's flank. Not enough to seriously injure, but enough to establish that he wasn't easy prey. The animal retreated a few steps, reassessing this strange bipedal opponent. Arlen used the moment to his advantage, recalling his xenobiology training. Predator behavior often followed universal patterns across different worlds. Establishing dominance without killing was sometimes possible. Arlen held his knife visibly, but lowered his aggressive posture, instead making a low, steady sound in his throat, not threatening, but not submissive either. The creature tilted its head, clearly confused by this behavior. Over the next several encounters with the same animal, which Arlen began to think of as the local, he established a pattern. Each time they met, he would demonstrate his ability to defend himself, then offer a small portion of his rations. Gradually, the creature's aggression diminished, replaced by cautious curiosity. By the third day, the animal would approach his cave entrance, no longer growling, but watching with intelligent eyes. Arlen began speaking to it in a low voice, knowing the words meant nothing but the tone conveyed peaceful intent. "You know, on Earth, we domesticated wolves over thousands of years," he told the creature, as it cautiously accepted food from his hand. "We don't have that kind of time, so you're going to have to be a quick study. Whether through necessity, intelligence, or simple adaptation." The creature, which Arlen eventually named Kira, began to show signs of accepting him. It would alert with a specific chattering sound when Zeltron patrols approached, and eventually began guiding Arlen to safe water sources and areas with edible vegetation. This unexpected alliance proved invaluable as Arlen continued gathering intelligence on Zeltron operations. With Kira's acute senses complementing his tactical knowledge, he was able to observe troop movements, map patrol routes, and even identify what appeared to be a major command center hidden within a mountain range. 7 days into his survival ordeal, opportunity presented itself in the form of an abandoned Zeltron outpost. A sudden acid storm had forced a hasty evacuation, leaving behind damaged equipment. Arlen waited until he was certain the position had been abandoned, then moved in with Kira keeping watch. Among the remains, he discovered a partially functional Zeltron weapon, the Viper X, a sophisticated energy pistol known for its devastating accuracy. The power cell was at half capacity, and the targeting system damaged. But it was infinitely better than his knife alone. "Let's see if I can figure out how this works," Arlen muttered, carefully examining the alien weapon. The design was elegant, but unfamiliar, with no obvious trigger mechanism. Through careful observation and trial and error, he eventually discovered it responded to specific pressure points and thermal recognition, designed to be unusable by non-Zeltron hands. But Arlen found he could trick the system using components from his damaged suit. Armed with the Viper X, his growing map of Zeltron positions, and with Kira as his scout, Arlen began to plan his return to Alliance territory. The border was approximately 50 kilometers away, a journey that would take him through heavily patrolled areas and challenging terrain. He established a series of waypoints, planning to move primarily at night when Zeltron sensor efficiency was reduced. His map had grown into a detailed document, annotated with patrol timings, sensor blind spots, and environmental hazards. It wasn't just his ticket home. It was valuable intelligence that could give the Alliance a significant advantage. The journey began well. Arlen and Kira slipped past 2 patrol points without detection, using the natural cover of Sarian's rock formations and toxic mist. At one point, they were forced to hide in a shallow acid pool, with only their heads above the caustic liquid. Arlen's protective suit deteriorating further with each passing minute. However, their luck couldn't hold forever. On the 3rd day of their journey, approximately 30 kilometers from Alliance territory, they encountered a problem: a Zeltron forward operating base directly in their path, with no detectable route around it. "Looks like we need a distraction," Arlen told Kira, who had become remarkably responsive to his voice. Using components from his damaged equipment, Arlen created a series of small explosive devices, not powerful enough to cause real damage, but sufficient to trigger Zeltron perimeter alarms. He planted these at strategic points around the base, setting them to detonate in sequence. When the first explosion triggered, Zeltron forces responded exactly as anticipated, deploying to the eastern perimeter. As subsequent detonations drew their attention in a clockwise pattern, Arlen and Kira slipped through the momentary gap in their defenses on the western side. Their escape did not go unnoticed for long. By nightfall, Arlen detected Zeltron pursuit drones scanning the area. They were being hunted by an elite tracking unit, led by Colonel Roe Thorne, a name Arlen recognized from Alliance intelligence briefings as one of the Zeltron's most tenacious commanders. "They're not making this easy for us," Arlen told Kira as they took shelter in a narrow ravine. The alien creature pressed against him, its body heat a welcome contrast to the increasingly cold nights. The final leg of their journey proved the most challenging. With just 20 kilometers to the Alliance border, the Zeltron pursuit intensified. Arlen's map showed a direct route through a valley, but it would leave them exposed. The alternative was a treacherous path through an area of heavy acid rain and unstable ground. "Sometimes the most dangerous path is the safest," Arlen decided, choosing the hazardous route. The acid rain would interfere with Zeltron sensors, giving them a slight advantage. They traveled through a nightmarish landscape of bubbling pools and crumbling rock, each step potentially their last. Kira seemed to instinctively understand the danger, testing ground before Arlen crossed. Twice, the creature saved him from stepping onto surfaces that would have collapsed beneath his weight. When they were just 5 kilometers from the border, disaster struck. A Zeltron scout team materialized from the acid fog directly in their path, an elite unit led by Colonel Thorne himself. There was no time to hide, no place to retreat. Well, Thorne's voice carried through the mist, artificially amplified by his armor. "The Lost Alliance scout, I must commend you on your survival skills. Human. Few last more than a day in our territory without proper equipment." Arlen positioned himself behind a rock formation, Viper X in hand. Kira tense beside him. I'd thank you for the compliment, but I'm not sure it was intended as one. Surrender now, Thorn continued, and I promise your interrogation will be relatively painless. The Empire is particularly interested in how you've managed to tame one of Sarian's apex predators. Arlen glanced at Kira. Let's just say we found common ground. Without warning, the acid rain intensified, turning from a light drizzle to a torrential downpour. The sudden change created a curtain of caustic liquid between the two forces, and an opportunity. Now, Arlen whispered to Kira, who seemed to understand perfectly, darting to the left, while Arlen fired the Viper X to the right. The Zeltron forces split their attention, exactly as Arlen had hoped. In the confusion, he noticed something critical. The acid rain was reacting with the surface of a nearby pool, creating reflective bubbles that distorted sensor readings. Exploiting this phenomenon, Arlen fired the Viper X at precise angles, creating light reflections that multiplied his apparent position. The Zeltron soldiers fired at ghosts while Arlen circled behind them. Colonel Thorn, however, was not so easily fooled. He turned just as Arlen approached, raising his weapon. The two fired simultaneously, Thorn's shot grazing Arlen's shoulder. Arlen's hitting the colonel's tactical computer, mounted on his armor. Thorn staggered back, his systems momentarily disabled. In that crucial moment, Kira launched from the shadows, knocking the Zeltron commander to the ground. Not to kill, Arlen noted with surprise, but to pin and disarm, exactly as they had practiced with hunting smaller creatures. With Thorn temporarily incapacitated, Arlen quickly accessed the commander's tactical display. It contained a complete map of Zeltron positions throughout the sector, invaluable intelligence that he downloaded to a portable data chip, salvaged from his own damaged equipment. The Alliance appreciates your contribution, Colonel, Arlen said, retrieving the chip as Kira maintained her hold on Thorn. Kira, time to go. The creature released the Zeltron commander at Arlen's command, darting back to his side as they fled toward the Alliance border. Behind them, Thorn shouted orders to his remaining forces, but the acid rain had intensified further, hampering pursuit. The final kilometers were a blur of exhaustion and determination. Arlen's damaged suit had nearly failed completely, offering minimal protection against Sarian's toxic atmosphere. His lungs burned with each breath, and the wound on his shoulder throbbed mercilessly. Finally, they crested a ridge to see the unmistakable glow of Alliance perimeter beacons in the distance. They had made it to the border. As they approached the Alliance checkpoint, Arlen triggered a recognition signal using components from the Zeltron tactical computer. Almost immediately, spotlights swung in their direction, and armed soldiers moved into defensive positions. "Hold your fire!" a familiar voice called out. Lieutenant Celine Mora stepped forward, her weapon lowered but ready. "Captain Hayes, is that you?" Arlen managed a weak smile. "What's left of me, Lieutenant? Plus one new recruit," he added, gesturing to Kira, who remained alertly at his side, eyeing the Alliance soldiers warily. "Medical team, now!" Celine ordered, moving forward to support Arlen as his legs finally gave out. "You've been declared MIA for over 48 hours. We thought you were dead." "Almost was. Several times." Arlen winced as medics approached cautiously, their attention divided between his injuries and the alien creature that refused to leave his side. "But I brought back some souvenirs that should make Command very happy." Within hours, Arlen found himself in the medical bay of the Alliance flagship Celestial Vanguard, undergoing treatment for toxic exposure, malnutrition, and his various injuries. Kira had been reluctantly placed in a containment area adjacent to the medical bay, visible through a transparent barrier, a compromise Arlen had insisted upon, rather than having the creature sent directly to the xenobiology labs. "Your preliminary report makes for fascinating reading, Captain," Commander Reeves said, standing at the foot of Arlen's recovery bed. "Particularly the part about taming a Sarian apex predator. which our xenobiologists had classified as untamable. Arlen glanced at Kira through the barrier. The creature was curled up, watching everything with intelligent eyes. With respect, sir, I think our approach to the native life here has been fundamentally flawed. They're not just mindless predators. There's intelligence there, adaptability. So it seems, Reeves acknowledged. Dr. Vorn is particularly excited to meet your new companion. But first, tell me about this, he added, producing the Zeltron weapon and the data chip containing the enemy tactical information. The Viper X is more advanced than our intelligence suggested, Arlen explained. It integrates with the user's biometrics, which is why I had to jury-rig it to work for me. And the tactical data should give us complete insight into Zeltron deployments across the sector. Dr. Elena Vorn entered as they were speaking, her eyes immediately drawn to Kira. Remarkable, she breathed. A mature Sarian apex predator, displaying bonding behavior with a human. This contradicts everything in our xenobiology database. Most of our database was compiled from orbital observations, Arlen pointed out. No one spent significant time on the surface interacting with the wildlife. They respond to respect and consistency, not just dominance. Vorn approached the barrier, studying Kira with professional interest. The implications for our operations on Sarian are significant. If these creatures can be properly trained, they could provide advantages our technology can't match, particularly their ability to navigate the toxic environment without protection. Arlen felt a twinge of discomfort at the direction of the conversation. Kira isn't a weapon, Doctor. Our relationship is based on mutual survival and trust. Vorn turned to him with a reassessing look. Of course, Captain. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. In fact, I believe studying your interaction with Kira, was it? Could help us develop more sustainable approaches to operating on planets like Sarian. Commander Reeves cleared his throat. That's a discussion for another time. Right now, our priority is utilizing the intelligence you've brought back. The tactical data has already been transmitted to High Command. They're revising our offensive strategy as we speak. 2 days later, Arlen was released from medical care, though still on restricted duty. The information he'd gathered had already proven invaluable. Alliance forces had successfully neutralized a Zeltron forward base using the tactical data he'd retrieved, with minimal casualties. Kira had been moved from the containment area to a specially prepared habitat adjacent to the xenobiology labs, where Arlen visited daily. Dr. Vorn's initial skepticism had evolved into genuine fascination as she observed the complex relationship between human and alien predator. The neural mapping we conducted shows activity patterns I wouldn't have believed possible, Vorn explained during one such visit. Kira's brain is processing your verbal commands not just as conditioned responses, but with contextual understanding. There's actual communication happening. Arlen nodded, watching as Kira navigated a complex obstacle course designed to test her problem-solving abilities. I told you she was smart. Out there. We developed a whole system of signals, sounds, gestures. She would warn me about approaching patrols before my equipment could detect them. The military applications are obvious, Vorn noted. But I'm more interested in the ecological implications. If species like Kira can form productive relationships with humans, it changes our entire approach to colonization and resource development. Arlen had been thinking along similar lines. His experience had fundamentally altered his perception of not just Sarian Fa, but the entire war. The Zeltron weren't the mindless conquerors Alliance propaganda portrayed them as. They were adaptive, sophisticated, with technology that worked with alien environments, rather than against them. I've been meaning to ask, he said, changing the subject. Has Command made any progress decoding the Zeltron tactical systems I brought back? Vorn hesitated. That's classified, Captain. But since you're the one who retrieved it, yes, significant progress. The encryption was complex, but followed patterns our analysts eventually deciphered. We now have unprecedented insight into their deployment strategies. Later that day, Arlen was summoned to the command deck. A large holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing a detailed map of the sector. His map, he realized, enhanced with the data he'd retrieved and subsequent reconnaissance. Captain Hayes. Commander Reeves greeted him. Perfect timing. We're finalizing the strategy for our next offensive. Arlen studied the display. You're targeting their communication hub in the northern mountains. Precisely. Thanks to your reconnaissance, we know it's less heavily defended than their forward bases. A classic misdirection on their part. Our analysts believe we can neutralize it with a precision strike team, avoiding a larger engagement. The strategy was sound. Arlen had to admit. With the communication hub disabled, Zeltron forces would be temporarily isolated, giving the Alliance a significant advantage. We want you to consult on the operation, Reeves continued. Your first-hand experience with the terrain and Zeltron patrol patterns is invaluable. Arlen nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. During his time behind enemy lines, he'd observed something the tactical data couldn't convey: the Zeltron's relationship with Sarian itself. They didn't just occupy the planet, they had integrated with it, adapted to it. There was a lesson there that the Alliance was missing. As the briefing concluded, Arlen returned to the xenobiology lab. Kira greeted him with the chattering sound he'd come to recognize as welcome, pressing against the barrier separating them. Dr. Vorn, he called, finding the scientist at her workstation. I'd like to propose something unconventional. Vorn looked up, intrigued. I'm listening, Captain. I want to take Kira into the field on the next reconnaissance mission. Not combat, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just recon. She has abilities our technology can't match, particularly in detecting Zeltron activity. That's unprecedented, Vorn said slowly. But not without merit. I'll need to run it by Commander Reeves, of course, and develop protocols for handling and communication. Thank you, Arlen said sincerely. And there's something else. During my time on Sarian, I observed how the Zeltron used native materials to neutralize the acid rain and toxic atmosphere. I think we could adapt some of their techniques for our own operations. Vorn's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. Now that is interesting. Their environmental adaptation has always been superior to ours. If you could document specifics. Already working on it, Arlen assured her, pulling out a datapad containing his notes and observations. This war won't be won through superior firepower alone. We need to understand these worlds we're fighting over, not just exploit them. 1 week later, the Alliance launched its strike against the Zeltron communication hub, incorporating intelligence from Arlen's reconnaissance. The operation was a success, with minimal Alliance casualties and significant disruption to enemy communications. It marked a turning point in the Sarian campaign, the first clear Alliance victory in months. In the aftermath, Arlen stood at the observation deck of the Celestial Vanguard, gazing down at the swirling toxic clouds of Sarian 4. Kira sat beside him, now officially designated as a xenobiological asset rather than a specimen, a distinction Arlen had insisted upon. Lieutenant Celine Mora joined him, her expression thoughtful. High Command is impressed. They're talking about promoting you to Major and giving you command of a specialized reconnaissance unit. Arlen nodded, unsurprised. Incorporating Sarian predators into our operations? That's part of it. But more broadly, they're rethinking our entire approach to this war. Your experience demonstrated that brute force and technology aren't enough. We need adaptability, understanding of these alien environments. It's about time, Arlen said quietly. We've been fighting the Zeltron on their terms, trying to match their technology instead of developing our own advantages. Celine glanced at Kira. Your pet has certainly challenged a lot of assumptions. Dr. Vorn's team has identified 6 more potential species for partnership programs. Partnership, Arlen repeated with approval. That's the right word. Not exploitation, not domination. Partnership. As they spoke, a transmission alert sounded. Commander Reeves appeared on the nearest screen. Captain Hayes, report to command immediately. We've detected unusual activity at the former Zeltron outpost you mapped. It appears they're establishing a new type of defensive system we haven't encountered before. Arlen exchanged a look with Celine, then glanced down at Kira, who seemed to sense his sudden alertness. On my way, Commander. As he left the observation deck, Arlen's mind was already racing with possibilities. The map he'd created during those 48 hours behind enemy lines had opened up new understanding of Zeltron operations. But there was still so much to learn. The gun he'd brought back had revealed vulnerabilities in Zeltron technology. And Kira, his unexpected ally, represented perhaps the most important discovery of all. That survival in this interplanetary war would require more than superior weapons or tactics. It would require adaptation, understanding, and unexpected alliances. The Sarian campaign was far from over, but for the first time, Arlen felt they were fighting it the right way, not just with technology, but with intelligence, adaptability, and respect for the worlds they sought to control. As he stepped into the command center, Arlen caught sight of his reflection in a display screen, still bearing the scars of his ordeal, but standing taller, more confident. Those 48 hours behind enemy lines had changed him, just as they were now changing the course of the war itself. Commander Reeves gestured him toward the tactical display. Captain, we need your insight on this new development. Arlen moved forward, Kira at his side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. No longer just a soldier following orders, but a pioneer charting a new path through the stars.